right, we should be live now. So if you guys can just let me know if the sound is all good and you can hear me and all that good stuff, we can go from there. I know the stream is always a little bit behind, so I'll wait a minute or two, 30 seconds or so. Sounds good. Alrighty. Awesome. All right, we're live here. Thank you for joining me, whoever's here. We may have a little bit less of a crowd than usual today because the NFL playoffs going on right now. Although I don't know how much crossover there is into the the Pokemon world there. I imagine some of our non U.S. watchers probably aren't too interested in American football, but I have no idea. So, thank you for those of you who did join us today, and we'll just kind of have a chill, casual chat. It can also be fun and nice when there are less people, because we can have a little bit more of a back and forth rather than me sort of getting bombarded with questions. All right. Yusei Buya says, I know it isn't a good thing to compare modern with vintage right now since the market is so irrational, but I see it as a win when I can get a nice art low pop Watsy PSA 10 holo for around the same. Yeah, I think that if anything, it actually interestingly makes me more confident in buying some vintage stuff, even though the vintage stuff has gone up a humongous amount this year, and that makes me uncomfortable buying anything that has gone up so much in such a short amount of time before I see it kind of stabilize and sell for a certain price range for a while. The fact that there's so much interest and so much money in that modern stuff makes me more comfortable with purchasing the much rarer vintage stuff myself. I've really been looking into the numbers from other hobbies this week. And I do this periodically, but, I really studied a lot of the reprint numbers because so many other hobbies, and I was going to maybe make a video on this, but so many other hobbies, when we talk about the evolutions box here, so many other hobbies, they do reprints of their most famous cards, of their most popular cards, and or things like comics do reprints of their most popular covers, and nothing that was ever mass produced from my knowledge and from my research ever really retained much value or had any value in the long run. And the numbers are actually quite staggering because even items that are 30, 40, 50 years old that were reprints have almost no value that when they were mass produced. For example, like Batman #1 that recently sold for 2.2 million and 9.4 CGC. You can get like the 1984 reprint of that for $100 at 9.4 grade on eBay, for example. Or rookie cards like from sports, like one I was looking at was like Hank Aaron. You can get that for like $2-3. The reprinted version where the original in the same type of condition would be like 150,000. So it's these outrageous kind of differences. And interestingly, in Pokemon right now, people have decided, at least for the moment, that Evolution's Charizard is a highly sought after, historic, important item. I think that people are getting way ahead of themselves with that assertion. But at the end of the day, people can decide whatever they want, and Pokemon does not have to follow these other hobbies. When we look at Yu-Gi-Oh, same type of thing, right? The LOB, the Legends of Blue Eyes first edition card going for 60,000, 70,000, whatever it was. I don't follow Yu-Gi-Oh too closely, where you can get the reprint or the newest reprint for like $2. So it's interesting that, I would have expected Pokemon to follow that pattern. Hasn't so far. We'll see what's gonna happen with those cards. One big difference here is that these are booster boxes, and there's a certain amount of fun and enjoyment in opening up the product that is definitely causing those booster boxes to go up quite a bit. I think not, I do think in the long run though that may not be the case as people kind of get their nostalgia fix, and if they want to stay in the hobby, they're gonna get kind of bored at base set and look to other things. So we'll have to see how all that goes. Evolutions box is not a norm; it's an anomaly when we look at other hobbies. I've come across no examples of anything that has sustained of any reprints that have sustained extreme value over time, with the exception of reprints that are not mass produced. So they do certain reprints, and this exists in the comic world, it exists in the sport card world, where they add a signature, where they do some sort of unique small release, and those items can retain their value. But of course, Evolutions does not fit that mold at all. It's the most printed probably set of all time. So it's like you can do all that research, you can have all that understanding, but it's not going to help you in the short run in terms of where the hype is going to go, where the prices are going to go. I think in the long run, that stuff will likely pan out, because that's what happens in all these other hobbies, and will likely be what's going to happen in Pokemon, but not necessarily. Pokemon could be very different. We'll have to see. Glycin Airman says, you're crazy to put this up against the NFL playoffs. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I'm perfectly happy with having fewer people today. I like to just kind of stay consistent with this, and kind of have made an agreement, I guess, with you guys or with the audience that I'm going to try and at least do this, 3 o'clock every week. There may be weeks where I'm very busy where I make no videos at all, but I still try and do this one. Although there will be times, of course, where I can't, because I have something scheduled at this time that isn't movable. All right. Radazar says, yeah, vintage versus modern. Comparatively, a lot of vintage stuff is cheap at the moment. Yeah, definitely when compared to modern, particularly certain modern items. There's lots of modern items that, of course, are not worth anything or worth very little, but yeah, I mean, when we compare it to things like Special Delivery Pikachu or the Evolutions booster box, although, I mean, when you compare the Evolutions booster box to vintage booster boxes, there's still a tremendous difference in value there. So I get how people are thinking that box should be worth $1,000 if they don't, if they aren't as maybe studied in these other hobbies, or they think Pokemon's just a totally different entity that is going to be different than all these other collectibles, and they think, well, this box is the original base set and it's only going for like 1/20th the price. It should be a lot more than that. Like, I could see how people get there in their heads, the ones who do. Stevie Aoki just bought Yu-Gi-Oh cards. STC Collectibles says Stevie Aoki just bought Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Yeah, Stevie Aoki's into a number of different things. He's into, my understanding is he's into Japanese collectibles, and so he'll be into all of sort of the Japanese card type things. It's not just going to be Pokemon, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't really like Pokemon and enjoy it. That's my understanding. Radazar says, it was strange. About a month ago, all of his Legends of Blue Eyes reprint blisters got all bought out on eBay. That's interesting. And they had been sitting there for months with zero interest. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that happen. I think a lot of this is being driven by genuine people wanting to collect their childhood or just liking cards. Collectible cards are absolutely having a moment. Collectibles in general are having a moment, right? We talked about this at length in terms of all of these different, online shopping is having a moment, right? I mean, all of these things are coalescing to cause these types of things, happening. I've been very involved in the DBZ and been watching that and been in touch with a lot of the biggest players in that market, and getting a lot of the same stories where they would have listings that were sitting there forever that now are being bought out like very quickly. I think it's very important because I hear people on YouTube and I hear people other places telling people like, a set like Evolutions or some of these sets were due for were like they talk about like steady growth, and that these sets have really experienced like steady growth for 4 to 5 years, and give these like very misleading ideas, when in reality the majority of growth that I've seen on lots and lots of cards, particularly in the last 6 months, have been very erratic and very huge swings in price, right, guys? Like we see in like a week, like a booster box doesn't go up for 4 or 5 years, and then in 2 weeks it goes up 4 times. It doubles again in price with evolutions, for example. So I think that understanding that's why I'm very on the side of like that's pretty strange. Is it that in 1 week all of this tremendous amount of interest came in the hobby, or is it that people started seeing the prices going up, saw an opportunity to make money, or the sellers felt some of that, raised their prices, people kept buying, they kept raising their prices? I think people are making a big mistake on chasing prices up, thinking that means that means that people are collecting it and really enjoy it as a collection. I think you have to be very careful there. Now, some of it absolutely is being driven up by that, but that type of very quick growth can be followed by very quick retraces too. Now it might not, right? I have no idea. Evolutions has been so interesting because I've really been tracking it pretty closely the last month, and just kind of seeing some retrace on it, and some, boxes sitting there a little bit of a slowdown in the buying. And then it kind of really picked up. People started raising their prices. It picked up even more. I've heard about a lot of stuff going on in Europe where people are buying a lot of this product, doing a lot of streams in Europe right now, and their audience members are paying huge amounts of money. $1,500 I've heard, they're getting back from these boxes. So that, of course, if they can buy them for $700, $800, of course they're going to buy those all day, open it, sell it to their audience. Why their audience is paying that, I don't exactly know. For the community, for the connection, for the relationship with the streamer, for the cult of personality, because the streamer's lying to them, in some cases, maybe telling them that they can't get it at a better deal, this is a great investment. I don't know. It's odd. I'm also seeing a lot of crazy purchases where people are buying way over market on certain things when they could buy it cheaper at the exact same time. A lot of that stuff happening. So, interesting stuff for sure. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't see, any sign that it's going to like retrace right now. Things are looking like it's going to continue to move up a little bit here and there, but it may very quickly change, and the dynamics around it may very quickly change, and it may very quickly retrace back to $600, $500, $400. It's possible. I do not know. So I'm going to be, watching it like the rest of you guys. Definitely very interesting. You say Booyah says, waiting for the day someone rich wants to get into E-Series cards. My collection would be worth so much. So, E-Series has seen a humongous growth during this time. A lot of the vintage growth happened earlier. And I think that's, and I'm not saying you're missing this, you say Booyah, but I think people miss that because they come into the market now, or they came into the market a few months ago after all the vintage growth, or a lot of the vintage growth had already happened. And they look at Modern and they think, well, Modern has grown more, or Modern's the hot thing. That sort of thing. And I think Modern, clearly there are a lot more people buying Modern because there's so much more supply that in order to see these big jumps in Modern supply, there needs to be so many people buying it. So there is a ton of demand and a ton of interest in Modern. But for example, a lot of these E-Series hollows have gone up 4, 5, 6, 7 times in value also. So, but they have not gone up more. And that's interesting, right? That to me is interesting. Given how little supply there is. And, we can theorize all day about that it's because there just aren't enough of them to sell frequently enough to ladder up the prices, that people aren't seeing those new high prices, that not enough people are talking about it as great investments, that sort of hype stuff. Very confident in the very, very long run. The vintage stuff will be the stuff that people want. Again, people very strongly disagree with me. Certain people that say they just love Modern, and that's the beautiful stuff and the stuff that they like. And it's odd to me because it's like, dude, you grew up on this stuff over here. Like, if we compare this to any other hobby, the old vintage, older looking, less shiny, less crazy stuff is the stuff going for millions of dollars now. why do you think this hobby is going to be different? And two, do you like Pokemon? Like, why, like, people who don't like vintage, it's so weird to me because that's my childhood, so I love it so much. It's also weird to me people who don't enjoy and appreciate and love modern because it is shiny and colorful and it's cool to see what they're doing, and I like the new stuff too. So when I say that one is a better investment than another, I'm trying to talk kind of history of other collectible hobbies and where generally value is derived. It's not a subjective opinion of I like one card more than the other. It has to do with rarity, scarcity, age, right? These types of things, and how mint you can find these things. So you say, but yeah, I mean, I think E-Series is excellent. I really enjoy it. I have sold none of that. Not interested in selling any of that. The only vintage stuff I've really sold during this time, like the WotC era vintage stuff I sold, was Base Set Unlimited at the height. I was selling that. That was the only thing. And I was selling some of my commons, uncommon first editions. But outside of that, I think if Pokemon stays hot, these items are incredibly, incredibly undervalued relative to other things. Okay? But what will happen in Pokemon in general, I have no idea. But that's how I would generally think about it. Nathan Gardner says, is Cosmic Eclipse getting an actual reprint? I'm not like the reprint guy. I hear info from other people. I look at Pokebeach. Frankly, that's what pretty much most YouTubers do, to be honest. They just kind of wait for it to come out on Pokebeach and then share it. There are these great resources, people who tend to get the news first, and then we kind of paired it. It's just not my focus because I know that there are a million channels that are going to tell you guys that, and that are going to speculate on that. So I just don't focus on it too much. I don't even remember if I've heard that one's going to reprint or not. People like Danny Phantom, Best has a great channel in terms of like talking to you about what he's getting. He's very transparent. What he's going to get from his distributor, how much money, he's how much money you can make from breaking down modern, selling your bulk, how best to do that. It's like all that sort of modern stuff. I think he's great with. I can talk about more of the psychology of the market and the overall long-term investment potential of those sorts of things. But he would have the insight, and some of those people would have the insight into when the reprint is going to come. What I will say, until a reprint is confirmed, if people are telling you that there isn't going to be a reprint or that we're out of a window, I hear people talking about a window of reprints. There is no window of reprints. Anything can be reprinted, okay? WotC can be reprinted. It won't have the same, it won't be the same set. It'll be the same arts. But, these types of sets, like, they can be reprinted, with the same manufacturer, the exact same card, the same look of the card. So, that's always a possibility. Basic Trainer says, with PokeTubers expressing burnout in the hobby, will this have a negative impact in the hobby overall? Keep up the great content. Yeah, I think, I'm not sure who you're referring to, Basic Trainer, and maybe you can say below who has been expressing that sort of burnout. I think that for me, it's I definitely wouldn't get burned out if this channel burns me out a little bit sometimes, and burnout's way too strong of a word because I do really enjoy it overall. It's a definite net plus running this channel and getting to communicate with you all and talk. But of course, there are times when I'm just kind of tired about talking the finance. I'm tired of the same questions, and I'm tired of, I get lots of Instagram DMs, and I try to answer a lot of them, but some of them I just don't get to or don't answer because it's a lot of the same questions, and I'm basically giving a lot of time away for, just out of sort of the goodness of my heart because I care about the community and want to help people, which I do very genuinely, but that takes energy for me, and I have people who in my life and friends and family and relationships where they want my attention and they want my energy, and if I'm burning myself out talking to you guys or tiring myself out, I don't have as much there. So I think that people who are doing Pokemon content and Pokemon YouTuber content are going to likely be more burned out on Pokemon than the average person who's just kind of absorbing the content and taking breaks from the content and kind of enjoying it, because the way YouTube works, you have to put kind of so much out there to continue the channel, to continue things. I think that people can get burned out on the swings in prices. People can get burned out on, just having so many cards, being overwhelmed with it. People can get burned out by spending so much money, by the anxiety of spending too much money. There are lots of things in this hobby that I think can put you in a bad mood and make you feel negative. People can get burned out on talking too much about the money and not enjoy, not looking at their binders enough, not looking at the cards enough, being too focused on buying and amassing your collection and not focused enough on enjoying the collection that you have. I think all that stuff's really important for each individual to kind of take care of their mental health, and there's mental health in collecting for sure around trying to balance all of that, because it's super fun to buy, right? It's fun to sell and make profit, but it's also really fun to like sit with my binder, look at the cards with a nice cup of tea, just kind of relax on a Saturday morning, look at the progress I've made, enjoy the different cards, notice different things about different cards that I didn't notice before, look at cards that I haven't looked at in a while. I think all that stuff will help people from sort of not burning out. I'm never going to like burn out on Pokemon. I mean, I enjoy it. It's a big part of my life, a big part of my childhood. I would suggest people don't burn out on Pokemon. It's not something worth burning out over. If you're not enjoying it, just stop watching for sure and take a break and come back. I think part of the problem is that fear of missing out and that fear of missing gains that keeps people kind of like, if I don't watch eBay every day, or if I don't look at prices every day, I'm going to like miss out on a deal and things are going to get out of control. It's like, if this hobby actually is a good hobby, it's going to be around for 30, 40 years, right? Like, you're fine. Like, take a year off and it'll still be here. It's okay. So I think that that's a really important message, and there's a lot of, crazy, insane market where price swings are so much and people are making such incredible fortunes. Of course, there's going to be burnout with that, the amount of energy spent on that and the amount of energy analyzing the market and all that sort of stuff. So just take care of yourselves for sure. Andrew M says, would anyone recommend the $150 CGC membership over the $25? I know you get 150 grading credit, but is the submission cost low enough to make it worthwhile? So I'm not following CGC carefully. It's a math problem. I don't know all the numbers. You kind of just have to sit down and do the math. It's like, well, how many cards am I going to submit? It's the same thing with the PSA membership. How many cards am I going to submit? How much am I going to save on the membership? Am I going to save enough that it makes sense for me to buy the membership or go through a middleman grading service? And just kind of sitting down and doing that math. CJ Dewar says, what's up, Jake? Nice to see you here. Looking forward to today's chat. It was cool to see you in Pokegal's stream last night. Yeah, Pokegal is one of my favorite people in the hobby. Pokegal and Swami, two of my favorite people in the hobby. Wonderful people. Please go to their channels and subscribe to them. They work extremely hard. They're very honest. They care so much about people in the community. They're not out here trying to scam people, make money off of people. They're out here trying to share their joy of the hobby with you and give you their experience and expertise, and both of them have quite a bit. Both of them have bought and sold lots and lots of cards, have been around forever, particularly Pokegal when we talk about who's been around in the hobby for a very long time. Not sure how long Swami's been here. I definitely know for definitely a while, but probably not as long as Pokegal, because I know Pokegal's been in it the whole way. Maybe you have too, Swami. But yeah, please go subscribe to their channels. There's so many people. I'm going to try and bring as many people on the channel as possible. One of my goals into getting bigger, and why I'm going to say things like, please subscribe, please like the video. It's time to try to grow this channel again, because there's so many people. I want to use this channel to help other people's channels grow who I think are really caring about the community and putting out just like great, valuable content that, to the last person's question, that is not, basic trainer's question, that is not going to burn you out. Watching Pokegal talk about Pokemon, watching Swami talk about Pokemon is going to make you feel good and connect to it and enjoy it. Because it doesn't, frankly, there's a lot of content that drains me because I just don't feel like they actually enjoy it that much, and it just feels like it's about the money and maybe they enjoy the money part, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know. I may have that response. Other people may love that content. People may have that response to me and not like my channel, right? And feel like this is soul crushing or draining or whatever, and doesn't make them feel better, about the market. And I get that too. We certainly talk about, difficult subjects here that not everyone wants to hear, and that is not always the uplifting. most uplifting stuff. So I would get that as well. But, you know, Pokegal, Swami, Sakari, you know, there's going to be a lot more people I want to bring on in hopes to help their channels grow and get them the attention they deserve, for them for sure, but also for you guys, because you'll actually, I think, you'll feel better in the Pokemon community when you're friends with these people, when you watch these types of people's channel. You're going to have more fun. You're going to enjoy it because they're very caring, good people. Let's see where I'm at here. David Diaz says, do you think vintage cards as a whole, like the Game Boy promo Lugia, are undervalued right now due to all the hype in modern cards and product, i.e. special delivery Pikachu, Evolutions booster box? Yes, they're definitely in my view, very undervalued as compared to that modern stuff. If you just sit down and do like the math in terms of the amount, estimated more supply of that in the world, and the amount more demand of that stuff you're going to need for those prices to go up over time versus the prices of these vintage cards where there's so little in the pop report and likely to be not very much more, it's pretty staggering. So even if you think modern is going to always be more popular than vintage, which I absolutely do not think that the modern sets coming out now are going to be more popular than vintage, I cannot imagine any of these modern sets being more popular than any vintage sets in 20 to 30 years. Very difficult for me to imagine, just looking at all the other collectible history. You know, what happens generally is the most modern sets are very popular. People are very engaged with them. In a growth period, same exact thing happened in sports. All those sets were selling gangbusters. People were loving those modern sets. But then people got tired of them, got bored of them. They came back to the original, to the rarest, to the stuff that had that chase. And that's really what kept those prices so insanely high, and those first appearance cards, those rookie cards, that sort of stuff. So I would trust in that, be patient. You know, what's ironic is that a lot of people tell me things like they really like modern more, and Evolutions is their favorite set. I hear that. And it's like, well, Evolutions is what is it here? Do you like Evolutions because you really like base set and you like the original look of the Pokemon and you want the nostalgia, or do you just like the modern? And for me, those people seem a bit confused, and frankly, I think they're shilling. I think there's a ton of people just shilling for their own product. I get said that I'm shilling for my own product. If modern becomes more valuable than vintage, I will do just as well, because I have a ton of modern, right? So, and a ton of PSA modern slabs, okay? So I'm not shilling for one thing over the other. I'm actually giving you my opinion because I own it all. I do feel like a lot of people are shilling modern because they own it. People in comment sections, it's just the truth. YouTubers, and they may not even be, they're not like even that intentionally doing it, but they're having a bit of, they're not able to see things clearly because they don't own all of it, and they want what they own to be valuable. And I totally get that. Of course, when you put a lot of money into something, you want it to retain value. Okay, so just be very careful not to, I think, fall for that, and get kind of sucked into that in the short run. And the short run to me at this point is 3 to 5 years. The short run is not a few months, and I think I need to be really careful when I say short run. Short run could be 3 to 5 years, and a lot of people are here to make money. So this type of advice doesn't matter to you. If you're here to flip quickly and make money, modern is extremely hot. I think following trends in modern, trying to predict the next hype thing, trying to predict the thing that's going to move the most, putting a lot of money in there, looking to flip it, may be your best bet right now, because vintage may end up being stagnant for a little bit. Vintage may not be. Vintage may have a huge spike and people may come back to vintage now. I have no idea. Not going to tell you what to do. Not going to predict prices here. But I think when we talk, you know, if you want to build a collection that you want to hold for your whole life, for 20, 30 years, even 10 years, that would be my thoughts on what's going to be able to retain value. Connor B says, what's up, Jake? Could you talk a little bit about the EX era that you chatted with Sebastian about? Not having grown up with these, they interest me, but I have little knowledge thus far. Sure, Connor. So that era became, so when I got back into the hobby, I started with base set Jungle Fossil. Then I did like Rocket, the gyms. Then I started collecting Neo and E series at the same time. And then when I sort of made a decent amount of progress in those, I actually one day I just saw, I never even knew about those cards, those Nintendo EX cards, didn't know about the gold stars and things like that. And then I saw some people trying to sell these cards for like a lot of money, and I was like, what are these cards? Why are they going for so much? Did my research on understanding that the pull rates were, crazy low, like 1 in 72, type pull rates for these cards. Looked at the art of these cards, loved them, did some research on how many of these boxes were, likely in the world, talked to some fairly knowledgeable people to try to get a sense of where, how much supply there was of these, how much supply there was going to be, looked at the pop reports, realized that, gold stars were these incredibly rare, gorgeous, valuable, shining cards from the first era of Nintendo printing Pokemon cards. Saw a lot of historic value there, a lot of collectability, and felt they were very unique with that gold star. Really just fell in love with that. Love with the hunt, love with the chase, and the art is incredible. So it kind of has everything there for me. Then I started making some progress on the gold stars, and then I saw the regular EX, not the regular hollows, but the EX hollows, the lowercase EX hollows from those sets, and I was like, wow, these are insanely undervalued to me. I could buy them at the time, $20, $30 in PSA 10, $50 in PSA 10. The highest ones were going for about $200, $300 in PSA 10. Charizard may have been a little bit more than that in 10, but not much more. The 9s were like $120, $150, $200 at the time. Now they're $2,000. So those have 10x'd a lot of the prices on those types of things. Right. Big growth on those from where they were. Saw a lot of value in those because they were, I thought, stunningly gorgeous. Almost all of them, I think, are gorgeous. I love the shine pattern, the hollow pattern on the edges. Big fan of those. Really fun to collect. The probably my two favorite sets of them, of those EX cards, lowercase EX cards, were Fire Red, Leaf Green, with kind of a lot of the base set, my favorite base set Pokemon, including Blastoise, Charizard, and Venusaur, but also Pokemon like Gengar, which I really love, and Gyarados, and a lot of the starter Pokemon. And then I really loved the EX Team Rocket. Those were sort of the two ones that I gravitated to immediately initially, and I think a lot of people do that too. I think that's why that even though the pop reports have always been a bit higher on those, in part because people like them so much and are grading them, of course, and in large part probably, but because when you look at the gold stars, interestingly, of like EX Team Rocket, they're so low. So that was always interesting to me, but why exactly that was, and I had my own theories, and it's all speculation, but yeah, those EX Team Rocket little case EX cards, so gorgeous. Then I started getting into the hollows. When all of those started going up in price a little bit, I started going for the hollows, because the hollows, just the regular hollows, are gorgeous. There are not very many of these boxes in the world. There are very few of these cards in gem mint condition. I was trying to get them in 10s. They're not always the easiest cards to grade. They do have problems on them, and there's very little of this sealed mint product left. And so there just aren't going to be a lot of those hollows. And a lot of these sets have a lot of hollows in them, so to pull each individual hollow is very difficult. So all of these cards, they're not going to be very many in the world, right? Even just the regular hollows. So tons to collect. Okay, when you think about, there's also secret rares that are really cool from these sets that look like normal hollows, but they're the secret rare of the set. Very cool cards. There are when we think about and we break down the different eras, there are the sets that have the gold stars. There's the sets that just have the lowercase EX cards, and then there are cards that don't have the lowercase EX cards and don't have gold stars. Okay. So when you go into these and you look at them, that affects the prices on these. So like the early set, like Dragon, which is the first Nintendo did and should be much more famous and popular and well known, has never been, because it didn't have those gold stars. It didn't have those chase cards in it, and so people just kind of ignored it, even though it has that E-series look very historic, very cool bridge look on it from the from, and so as a person who actually loves Pokemon for real and loves the history and studies and likes to see those transitions from time period to time period, I love owning cards that reflect that time period and have that historic value. I think in the long run, people who stay in Pokemon are going to really be here for the history and love the cards and are not just going to be in it for fat and for hype. And so stuff like that is going to be where the value is, where the story is. That's what people are going to want. Okay? So that's my spiel on those. Big fan of that era, always have been. Hopefully that's useful and helpful. I can tell you all the cards on all those sets. I'm obsessed with those sets. All right, maybe I'll try and answer some questions quicker. I know I answered them so slow, we get to so few. But I have so much to say on everything, so I love talking about it. Let's see. Connor B said, Jake, can you also touch on if you have changed any thoughts on CGC grading? They're growing on me a lot. So I never have had strong thoughts on CGC one way or another. My sort of opinion on it has been it's always been interesting because Charlie was going to be there and they were going to do more. And what I think I've said on these types of live streams when I was asked early on was sort of like the strong negativity on CGC is just kind of, a lot of that is because people are doing it just for money and for clout and not clout, or clout with PSA, frankly, but because they have relationships with PSA, because they have all their cards in PSA. There's bias against CGC for no good reason. There was also people who were biased on behalf of CGC for no good reason who were shilling for the company because they have problems with PSA. So I think for me, it's like, let's see what happens with CGC was always my take. I think it's interesting to see, where they're going to go. Obviously, like doing that prototype Blastoise, that's the type of stuff that I was looking for CGC to do. To grade these types of cards that had never been graded before, to grade unique errors, to actually correctly label the errors, that sort of thing is definitely going to be there. Right now is their niche. They're the only ones doing that. That being said, and then BGS a little bit more. PSA does like none of that at all. They really let us down. I think that may put pressure on PSA over time to actually hire more Pokemon people or some Pokemon people if they want to continue being the dominant force in Pokemon that they have always been. It's going to be very hard for them not to be because so many Pokemon cards, particularly the most expensive cards, are already graded in PSA cases. They're going to have to get them to go over to CGC to really take a huge part of the high-end market cap. But the biggest thing for CGC right now, and the reason I think most people are grading with CGC, to be completely honest, has nothing to do with the quality of CGC. It has to do, or the lack of quality of PSA. It has to do with the wait times. People are looking to flip cards. Businesses are flipping lots and lots of cards. They need the biggest way to make money in this hobby forever has been buying raw cards, grading them, selling them at a premium. People pay way too much for certain graded cards, particularly modern graded cards. When they could buy the exact same quality card raw for nothing, they pay a humongous premium for the PSA 10. It's just the reality. People are going to catch on to that eventually. In the meantime, people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars off of that, or were. Now it's much harder to do it than it was because the wait times are so long. Obviously, so many people have caught on that now that everyone's all grading. PSA has this unbelievable backlog. Millions of cards, maybe, who knows, million plus cards. Are we going to hit the junk slab era because so many cards have come out? All that stuff. I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch. I think all that stuff is what I'd be thinking about. I don't have a strong negative feeling on CGC in terms of like people don't like the way the cases look. I think they're okay. I don't love their cases. I don't hate their cases. I think whatever your subjective opinion on them is reasonable on that part. CGC has had those issues with cases opening, not being sealed well enough, that sort of stuff. That stuff's not good. That's problematic. I've heard some issues with them damaging cards, but that happens at PSA too. In terms of grading, CGC seems to be, based on the cards I've looked at, I have such a small sample size. I'm so not an expert on this yet. I don't really think anyone is. I don't think we have a big enough sample size in general. But CGC seems similar-ish to Beckett, maybe slightly harder. Probably the exact same, though. Probably the exact same. But definitely difficult. I think getting 9.5 or getting a 10 in CGC, very difficult. Similar thing to Beckett. Those are my thoughts on it. I'm a big wait and see in the long run. I think people mostly are using it right now to flip and to get cards on the market quickly. That's, I think, makes the most sense, is to grade your errors there, to grade your flipping cards there. I would not grade my long-term high-end cards there yet. If you want them to be worth the most, I think that there's too much risk in that. I'm not sure how CGC is going to do in the long run as compared to PSA. I think, though, and this is always true with BGS, PSA, when you're thinking about which one to send to, and now we can throw CGC in, because CGC, I think, is similar to BGS in this sense. When you think your card isn't going to get a PSA 10, but is also stronger than a PSA 9, is somewhere in the middle, and you think it's going to get that BGS 9.5, or you think it's going to get that now CGC 9.5, you should send it there, because that 9.5 will have a premium. If you have a modern card that looks absolutely stunningly perfect, the only way that you're ever going to make that card rare is by getting like a black label type thing, right? So sending it to CGC to get their highest 10, sending it to Beckett to get their highest 10. That's the way to make it stand out. Otherwise, I would not be sending to those unless you need to flip into the market, my personal opinion. Okay, if you're a collector, though, it's about whatever you prefer. If you like the look of CGC, go with CGC. I'm just talking purely on the wanting your collection to retain the most value or have the most value. All right. Okay, Omnipoke says, okay, time to show off those binders. Yeah, I still own I still own lots and lots of Pokemon cards. Basically, the vast majority of my collection. Here's a little bit of it in the background. Got some of these black boxes with some goodies inside. A few of my favorite binders in the back there. I am eventually, hopefully going to make some more videos that actually show the cards. I know we've really gone away from there. Big fan of people like Pat Flynn's new channel. You guys should go check him out. They're the channels that I think are going to be hopefully the next wave of really showing the cards in a beautiful way, telling those stories. I'm hoping to then, obviously show the cards because I like the cards and talk about the cards. But the main focus here is going to be talking about the psychology of the market, the ideas behind the market, talking about the stories, communicating, having a community. It's not going to be showcasing the cards in the most beautiful way, like some of those channels. Good to see you here, Jeff, by the way. Pokemon Classic says he's watching both. I feel you. I would have been watching this game if I wasn't. I'm a Tom Brady fan. So, and actually I'm fascinated by this matchup here. Be interesting to see. It's hard. I really like Aaron Rodgers. It's hard for me. I guess I'm rooting for Brady because I'm a huge Brady fan. But I'd also love to see Aaron Rodgers win another Super Bowl. I think he really deserves it, and he's such an amazing quarterback. And Tom Brady has so many that even as I'm from Boston, as a Pats fan, person who just absolutely loves Tom Brady and appreciates so much what he did for our football team. He has won so many. It would be kind of nice to see Aaron Rodgers win a Super Bowl, but. We'll see. E says, did you see Squeak's recent video about investing in Modern? And if so, do you have any thoughts on it? I think Modern cards are beautiful, but I'm worried about the amount of supply long term. Yeah, so I think I saw it. I didn't watch the entire thing. I saw a little bit of it, to be completely honest, just to kind of catch the what he was kind of going for. In my general sense, without having watched the whole thing, was that he was arguing that you can make money in Modern, which has always been the case, and anyone who says that you can't make money in Modern is not living in the real world, because even when Pokemon wasn't as popular, people were still making plenty of money in Modern and Modern promos. So Modern is investable in the sense that for short term, in the sense that you can make money. When I use the word investment, what I'm really talking about is items that you can feel like are really going to retain a lot of value over time and have certain characteristics that are likely going to make them go up with time, rather than sort of erratically being moved around by short periods of high demand and then radically going down by short periods of low demand and being driven by speculation. I'm not interested in items that are being driven in the short term by speculation. I'm looking for things that have that sort of long-term investment qualities to them. Modern definitely doesn't have those as compared to vintage. Anyone who's telling you different, I don't know what world they're living in terms of identifying what makes something investable. You know, it's even if you like modern 100 times more, 100 times more with these items than vintage, they're going to be way more than 100 times more gem mint of that item than there are going to be of these vintage items. So it's very strange. What I think he was arguing, and I completely agree with that, and particularly if we think investable in the next 3 to 5 years, I think modern absolutely could retain a lot of value in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe even longer. You know, this period, I have no idea. Very risky. I wouldn't predict it at all. When I say 3 to 5 years, I'm saying that because when I've studied these other markets, but like those 3 to 5 years has been I've seen periods of heat in some of those markets, so that's why I throw out those numbers as potential guesses. But just because that was what happened in comic books, that's what happened in sports book, trading card, sports cards, doesn't mean that's going to be what's going to happen here in Pokemon. Within those frameworks, it was also more like 10 to 12 years of kind of off and on growth and periods where it got hot, periods where it retraced, so we may see that as well. It's the type of thing that you're going to have to, in my opinion, constantly watch, monitor, and it's going to be a lot more driven by short-term speculation and what's hot and what's not, rather than good fundamentals that you don't have to watch and don't have to worry about. I feel very confident that if you buy some of these low pop vintage cards, you don't have to sit there and probably watch the market, and you don't have to worry about timing things. I think if you're buying and selling modern and that's your game, it's a lot more about predicting and timing the market and looking at like sales model, really looking at eBay all the time, scouring, seeing how many of this thing is being sold on eBay each day, trying to capitalize on those, short-term things. Same thing happens in Magic. You see a lot of the modern activities, a lot of that speculation, buyouts. We didn't really have that in Pokemon as much before. Now we're seeing it a lot. We're going to see it a lot more. Get used to it, okay? But if a card goes up a lot in value in a very short amount of time, that has nothing to do with its investment qualities over 20 to 30 years. We're talking about two very different things, okay? Now, there can be overlap. There can be reasons why a card has skyrocketed, even a modern card. And there can be aspects of modern cards, of course, that make them very investable over 20 to 30 to 40 years, 100%. I'm not saying that. But vintage has better in all that. They're unless you're talking about like modern cards that weren't printed a lot, staff cards, promos, things like that. But when we're talking about just set cards, they just don't have as much going for them in the long run. Okay. And it has nothing to do with what you like. It's not about what people like. It's just about supply. All right. Hey, Bluish Collectibles. Nice to see you here. Shreddy Breck, nice to see you here, Shreddy. Another great channel. You guys should check him out too. Shreddy, you mentioned DBZ the other day, Jake. What have you bought from that? Also, Star Wars, are you still buying any of the cards? Yeah, so I have bought a lot of DBZ, guys. I'm like $30,000 to $40,000 in. I'm trying to complete everything as much as I possibly can. I will show it eventually. I'm in love. Absolutely don't care if it goes up in value or it doesn't go up in value. I think that it's unlikely to go down in value too much. It absolutely could go down in value. When I do a video on it, I will talk more about the rarity of these cards. These cards are much rarer than Pokemon cards. Much harder to pull, much harder to grade, all that sort of stuff than any set cards. And I think are just have phenomenal art. Really connect with me to my childhood and watching the anime series. Recently, I was like looking at my cards while I was like rewatching episodes of Dragon Ball Z, and I was in heaven. Love doing that. Now, when I put that much money into something, I do a tremendous amount of research. I know as much as I possibly can about something. I understand the price history on everything. I see why it's moved a certain way. I talk to all of the biggest players in the hobby. I don't just go in and drop that type of money, willy-nilly, okay? And just because I like something, that's a lot of money. Okay, so I am doing it because I think that there are investment potential there in terms of it going up. I also feel like in some ways it's actually less risky than Pokemon because the people are so fanatic about it. Not nearly as many people know it, and what has got the prices to where it has up to this point is actually the fanaticism of people wanting the cards desperately and putting it in their collections. It's actually a very poor community, generally speaking, in the sense that there aren't that many deep pockets who can buy up huge collections. There are a few huge collections that I've run into, but a lot of the people are just kind of like lovers of it. Zero of these like $100 million investment people coming in doing whatever they're doing in Pokemon right now. There are those people here. They're making huge waves. They're causing huge spikes. If that hits Dragon Ball Z, is game over for those cards. It may never at all, but the reason why I say in some ways it's less risky is because the prices haven't been built up by that type of interest. They've been built up by people who I don't see ever leaving the hobby or not wanting these things. I can tell you when a card is posted, you have 25, 30 people trying to buy it. Okay, one of these ultra rare cards. People are jumping over each other to get it. So when people criticize me, and I've had people criticize me about, people don't like Dragon Ball Z, you don't know, you're wrong. you're very wrong. You haven't done your research. You haven't looked into that market. You don't really know. Now, will I ever see big growth on those things? I have no idea. Will cards in general take a dip, including Pokemon, including everything? Absolutely could. I would see, could see big losses on that. I'm comfortable losing the majority of my investment in those because I'm a collector, because I love the cards. They make me happy. They bring me back to my childhood. And they've been a fun sort of escape and break from Pokemon. To go back to that Burnout question before, it's been fun to learn in depth about a new hobby. I study a lot of these hobbies so I can be a better Pokemon investor, but it's been fun actually diving in the same way I did into Pokemon in a, Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Z Score mainly, into that where there's just so much untapped potential, where unlike in Pokemon that had all of these people like Gary and Scott and intentionally trying to grow Pokemon and making it valuable, these guys are salesmen and branders to a certain extent. They wanted it to be big. They were selling it immediately. They were grading it, trying to get it out there. The Dragon Ball Z community has not been like that. If people did that and tried to build the market and bought a lot of these cards and started grading them and putting them on eBay and people started buying them, it could massively balloon. Okay, it's just the reality of how these markets are built. People who are saying that that can't happen, there's no evidence of that at all. In fact, the evidence is the opposite. Those are very likely the same people who would have said the exact same thing about Pokemon a few years ago, particularly before 2016. Now, just because something can happen doesn't mean that it will, and it's likely not going to happen. Probably less likely to happen than to happen. Okay, so that's my thoughts on it. I would say get educated on it. It's very hard to be educated on it. Part of why people aren't buying it. I will start making some videos on it eventually. To be honest, I'm not there yet. I'm still trying to build my collection. I still wanna own what I want to own. I'm still learning. I want to bring you guys complete, accurate information as possible when I start talking about it more. So that's my spiel on that. Daniel Johnson, I imagine first edition Holo PSA A+ are the safest bet over modern. Yeah, I mean, I think that trophies are safer, and promos that are very low printed, cards like Art Academy cards, if you want to buy something modernish, those I think are a lot safer. They're also a lot more difficult to sell. So I wouldn't buy those items for quicker flips, generally speaking, although there is plenty of heat on a lot of those cards and they are quite easy to sell right now. They may not always be very easy to sell, but there doesn't need to be much demand for you to be able to get huge price points, and it's very unlikely for those cards to retrace because people who own them don't want to sell them, certainly not for lower. They don't even want to sell for higher. So, and I don't think that's likely going to change. Generally, I think what happens in markets, and we can see this in these other sports cards and comic books, is actually even when markets take huge hits, the top cards in the hobby, the rarest cards in the hobby, are actually continue to go up often, or don't sell for lower, or then they stop selling maybe because there isn't any interest, and then eventually when interest starts peaking back up, then they start selling again at higher amounts. And so that is what I would expect to see more likely. Although with a lot of these trophy cards, we've seen 3, 4, 5. Some trophies have seen 6, 7 times growth. It's unusual, but a lot of them, and even the ones that have moved the most, have seen like 2 to 3 times growth in this period. My